Mark Consuelos sat alone beneath them, hands folded, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the cameras, someplace quieter, farther away. The familiar warmth that fans had come to expect from him was still there, but it flickered like a candle in a draft. When he finally spoke, his voice didn't carry the practiced ease of an actor delivering lines. It carried the weight of a man unburdening his heart. "I've always believed love is something you protect," he said softly. "But sometimes protecting it means telling the truth, even when it hurts." Within minutes, the clip began to spread. Screens across the world lit up with those words, and fans sensed it immediately. This was not another polished celebrity interview. This was a confession. For decades, Mark Consuelos had been half of a love story people pointed to when cynicism crept in. In an industry notorious for short-lived romances and carefully curated illusions, his relationship had felt different, steadfast, real, earned. Fans watched them grow together, raise children, build careers side by side. They laughed together on talk shows, teased each other on social media, and spoke openly about choosing love again and again. To many, they weren't just celebrities, they were proof. Proof that love could last. Proof that passion didn't have to fade. Proof that even under the harsh glare of fame, something genuine could survive. That's why Mark's silence in recent months had felt unsettling. The jokes were fewer. The smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. Fans noticed, even when they pretended not to. And now, here he was, breaking that silence. Mark paused during the interview, swallowing hard. The studio was silent except for the soft hum of equipment. "I didn't know how to say this out loud," he admitted, "because once you say it, it's real. And once it's real, you can't take it back." He spoke of love not as a fairy tale, but as something lived in and complicated, something that grows, stretches, and sometimes aches. "We fell in love young," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips before fading. "We grew up together, and when you grow, you change. Sometimes you change together, and sometimes you don't realize how far apart you've drifted until you look back." The words hit like a quiet storm, not explosive, not dramatic, just devastating in their honesty. Mark confessed that for years he had felt pressure to be strong, not just for his family, but for the world watching them. When people look at you and say, "That's the kind of love I want," you feel responsible for that image. You don't want to let anyone down. So he kept going. He smiled through uncertainty. He laughed through moments of doubt. He convinced himself that love meant endurance above all else. "But love isn't just about staying," he said, voice cracking for the first time. "It's about listening. And there were moments I ignored what my heart was trying to tell me." Fans would later replay that line over and over. "Ignored what my heart was trying to tell me." It felt painfully human. Almost immediately, speculation exploded. Headlines screamed. Social media filled with questions, theories, and heartbreak. Was this the end? Had everything been a lie? Were they saying goodbye? Mark seemed to anticipate the storm. "This isn't a goodbye," he said firmly. "It's a confession." He spoke of long nights filled with conversations that went nowhere, of mornings where love was present but fragile, of the fear that creeps in when you realize the person you love most is also the one you're most afraid of losing.
I felt like I was failing, he admitted. Not as a husband, not as a father, but as someone who promised to always be honest. The room felt smaller as he spoke, like the world had leaned in closer. Within hours, fans flooded social media with messages, grief-stricken, supportive, confused. "I grew up believing in their love. This hurts more than I expected." Mark didn't owe us this truth, but I'm grateful he shared it. This is what real love looks like: messy, honest, painful. Some cried, some defended, some simply sat in silence, processing the loss of an illusion they hadn't realized they were holding on to so tightly. Because Mark's confession wasn't just about his own love story. It reminded people of their own, of compromises made, of conversations avoided, of feelings buried to keep the peace. And that made it ache even more. As the interview neared its end, Mark seemed both lighter and heavier, relieved to have spoken, burdened by what speaking had unleashed. We talk about love like it's something you win, like if you stay long enough, fight hard enough, sacrifice enough, you'll get a trophy at the end. He shook his head slowly. Sometimes love doesn't look like victory. Sometimes it looks like sitting with discomfort. Sometimes it looks like admitting you're scared. And sometimes it looks like letting people see you when you're unsure. His eyes glistened, and for a moment, the actor disappeared entirely. What remained was a man standing in the aftermath of his own truth. When the cameras finally cut, fans were left with more questions than answers. Mark hadn't laid out a neat ending or a dramatic twist. He hadn't blamed or accused. He hadn't shattered the love story people cherished. But he hadn't wrapped it in false certainty either. And that is what hurt the most. In the days that followed, Mark stepped back from the spotlight. No posts, no follow-up statements, just quiet. Some fans hoped the silence meant healing. Others feared it meant goodbye. But maybe, just maybe, it meant something else entirely. In one final line from the interview, almost lost amid heartbreak, Mark had said something that lingered. I still believe in love. I just believe in a more honest version of it now. That sentence became a lifeline for many. Because love doesn't always end with a dramatic farewell. Sometimes it pauses. Sometimes it reshapes itself. Sometimes it demands truth before it can move forward, together or apart. Mark Consuelos didn't break the hearts of his fans because he stopped believing in love. He broke them because he showed what believing in love really costs. And in that raw, trembling honesty, he reminded the world that even the strongest love stories are written by imperfect people, doing their best, one brave confession at a time.
Mark stepped back from the spotlight. No posts, no follow-up statements, just quiet. Some fans hoped the silence meant healing. Others feared it meant goodbye. But maybe, just maybe, it meant something else entirely. In one final line from the interview, almost lost amid the heartbreak, Mark had said something that lingered. I still believe in love. I just believe in a more honest version of it now. That sentence became a lifeline for many, because love doesn't always end with a dramatic farewell. Sometimes it pauses. Sometimes it reshapes itself. Sometimes it demands truth before it can move forward, together or apart. Mark Consuelos didn't break the hearts of his fans because he stopped believing in love. He broke them because he showed what believing in love really costs. And in that raw, trembling honesty, he reminded the world that even the strongest love stories are written by imperfect people, doing their best, one brave confession at a time.